it's one of these things where I wasn't sure. I was like, most guys, when they want to listen or jump on, they're wanting to go straight to the content. So I thought, maybe I shouldn't include that. I don't know. Maybe it's a mistake. Who knows?
What's up, T? I see you come on there, man. Mr. Greg, what's up?
Hey, what's up?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, brother.
All right. Well, hey, here's just first of all, very humble to be able to share, with you guys, and I want you to know that we're in this journey of student ministry together, and it's a ever changing challenge. And so when I speak about parent ministry and the way parents look at us in student ministry, I want to try to give you a little bit of context. In 1991, okay, which is, kind of crazy to think about. Actually, 2001, not 1991. Because 1991 is going way back. That's when my oldest son was born. When you think about 9/11, let me just go that way. If you think about 9/11, the Twin Towers, when all that happened, youth ministry kind of took a shift because helicopter parenting went into like at warp speed. And so up until that point, the role of working with parents was one way, but after that time, you begin to see parents not only wanting to be involved, but they became more inquisitive about, okay, so what exactly are you doing? Where are you going? What are your security measures? Those were questions that never really came up prior to 9/11. And so fast forward to COVID season, and I feel like what it's going to bring in regards to challenges with parents is even more so. And so I just want to kind of give us context as we talk about parents. This is in student ministry. I know you realize, you know this, but just a refresher, it's three parts. It's dealing with students, it's dealing with parents, and it's dealing with youth workers. And a lot of times, when people immediately think of youth ministry or student ministry, they're like, oh, that's the guy that works with our students. Well, actually, that's the guy that works with our students, the families, and the youth workers. And it's got to be that mindset all the time that you're trying to shape, especially within your church, that's your responsibility. Because, we only have the students X number of hours a week. And that's why we must speak into the lives of parents and equip them to be the parents that God called them to be. And then obviously speaking into our youth workers who are developing relationships outside of the Sunday morning, Sunday night, or Wednesday night experience to be the extension of your ministry. And so, the thing about parents and dealing with those that may not respect your role, I want to walk through a couple of things that parents look for in a student minister first, and then we're going to go into that route of when they don't respect you. One of the things that a parent is looking for in a student minister is someone who is transparent and real. That we're not we're trying to present an image that's not realistic, that what they see on the stage and what they see in the office and what they see at a ball game, they see the consistency of who you are and what they see on social media. Another thing is they see someone who is concerned about communicating to them information, and really what we have discovered in dealing with parents, you can't really over communicate, do too much communicating dates, times, cost of events. One of the frustrating things, and I know you guys can agree with this. I mean, there have been many times where a parent would say, well, gosh, we didn't know anything about that. And you're like, okay, it's been on our social media for 4 weeks. We've sent out 2, emails, and you go through this list, but nevertheless, communication. Just a little sidebar that I will say at this point. One of the things we have found in our ministry that has been our best payoff in communicating to parents is using the Remind app. The remind system is our strongest method of reaching parents. It's better than email, better than social media. And I'm just telling you, for us, it's instant connection with our parents. You can send documents, you can send links, you can record a YouTube video with information to an event and make it private and send it to your parents. And so I will tell you that one of the things that you do when you're communicating to your parents is you're building trust, you're building confidence. And so that can start at you can be still in college doing youth ministry, but if you're communicating everything with the parents, they're so appreciative of information like that. We don't have to know all the answers for the questions that they have. Like if they're going through some challenging times, and when they reach out to us, many times they're not asking us to fix their issue, but they're wanting to know that we're going to walk with them through that. And so I think the ministry of presence with a parent is very important, that they know, hey, man, when you call Seth, he may not know exactly what to do in the moment, but he's going to walk you through the process of finding out the answers and getting you connected with the resources to help you. Does that make sense? So you're seen as a resource to them, not necessarily the guy who knows all the answers. And I'm going to tell you, early in my ministry, I think that was a frustration I had. I felt like I needed to know everything. I felt like when a parent called me and they said, my son is struggling with this, or my daughter's doing this, like I was supposed to give him the 6-point recipe to fix the problem. And that's really, in a way it is what they're looking for, but it's not really, because they want you to walk them through that deal. And you guys get this already, but I'm just going to say it. The parents don't need fart jokes. Okay, you can do that with middle school and in high school, or whatever, but they need to see responsible behavior. When a parent comes in to see a youth minister, are there down times in our life when we're doing things that we enjoy, whether it's shooting hoops or doing whatever? Yeah, that may be the case. But when they come in to meet us, they need to see a side of professionalism that shows responsibility. And when you're getting ready to go on a trip, when you're in positions of authority and leading, they need to see, hey, that's my youth minister, and I'm proud that that's my youth minister, rather than going, oh my gosh, there he goes again. So that showing responsibility is huge, and that breeds confidence. And I'm going to share with you that this is Seth's opinion, which is probably wrong, but I'm going to share it anyway. I think that we are now in an era of time where the last say on a student coming to student ministry is no longer the student, it's the parent. And because the parents talk, there may be a student saying, hey, why don't you want your kids to invite friends. And it used to be that child could just say to their parent, hey, I'm going with Tommy to church, with his church tonight. And that used to be okay. Now there's one more step that happens. Hey, Tommy invited me to church, and the mom or dad says, okay, well, who's Tommy? Okay, what church is it? Okay, I need to know more about that church. And so selling the parents on who you are responsibly is a huge part of the marketing, using a secular term. But if your parents have confidence, they're going to talk about the student ministry, and it breeds confidence within the community, and it makes it easier when those decisions come. All right. Offer praise about the kids. One of the things that I try to do on a regular basis, I try to catch kids doing well. I'll be somewhere and I see a kid doing something. We could be on a mission trip, and I'll take a picture and I'll send a text to a parent with that picture going, man, it's awesome watching your student, leading in worship, or sharing a Bible study, or doing a craft with a child, or praying with and sometimes the handwritten note. Don't underestimate the handwritten note. I love doing handwritten postcards to some of our parents, just saying, your student is such a blessing to have in our ministry. I see them encouraging others, and they have such influence that I really appreciate. Man, I've got 4 boys, okay? And the times where I received communication from teachers or coaches that were positive, when you get off the phone, or after you read the email or the letter, you're going, number one, you really appreciate that leader taking the time to do that. But it also just kind of gives you hope, because a lot of our parents right now are, especially now, they're wondering, is my child okay? Are they doing okay? Are they doing well? And they need to hear those words of affirmation. Parents need you to show grace. We need to show grace, because they're still trying to figure this thing out. A lot of times youth ministers will say things like, well, parents are the problem. I'm telling you, it's the parents' fault. It's parents. And listen, I've been there. Don't think I'm throwing stones. This is at me as well. But the thing about parents is they've never done this before. They're trying to figure this thing out, and so it still doesn't mean that you're going to go to your office going, parents are killing me right now. I don't why are they? But understand, sometimes you've got a single mom who is trying to be mom and dad, and they just forgot that the deadline for payment was yesterday, and they call in and you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Is there any way? And you could very easily go, no, deadline was yesterday. I'm sorry. We increased the fee $1,000 because you're late, or whatever. But, and I'm not saying going overboard, and just don't have any kind of guidelines, but there are times you need to be aware that we should operate in the spirit of grace, and parents receive that. And I think that's really important. And parents want to know that you value their input. When a parent comes up to you and says, I don't know if we need to keep doing such and such. It's very easy just to be offended and go, well, thank you. I didn't ask your opinion, but, it's very easy to feel that way, but sometimes it's wise to go, well, tell me why you feel that way. And they share their opinion going, you know what, we need to think on that. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's a perspective I haven't considered. And we'll kind of think through that to see if that's some changes we need to look at. I'm not sure we will, but we might, that's some, thank you. A lot of times people just want to be heard. Parents want to know that you value their input. And, so translating that over to when a parent just does not respect your role, or you feel like, man, they're like on the, I hate Seth club. What can I do to win this over in this situation? So, in one particular situation where I had a parent that just, I felt like no matter what I did, they were just a thorn in my side. Here's some of the things that I learned that are not easy. Number one, responding in love. Okay. Y'all, we have to be Christ first in these situations. We're the model to them of how Christ would respond. And so number one, we have to respond in love. The second thing is listen for the story beneath the story. Try to find out a lot. In this particular situation, I was just the easy target, but I really wasn't the reason why they were so angry. They were angry at life. And I basically reached out to them in love and just said, hey, can we meet? I wanted to get your ideas on a couple of things, and I really value your input. and I was stretching a little bit. Okay. I was stretching that a little bit, but I said, I want you to come in. And they came in, and I said, hey, listen, thanks so much for coming to see me. You've been involved in our ministry a couple of years, and I know that there's some things that I do that I think frustrate you a lot. I think you probably have some insight that would be good for me to kind of learn from, and I'd like to get a jump on that. What are some things that you're seeing that maybe I'm doing that causes that kind of tension? Well, immediately, the tears started, and she just openly said, I don't know if she'd ever been confronted like that before. And I wasn't trying to, quote unquote, break her. I really wanted to find out what was going on. And then she began to share with me what was going on. She was going through a divorce. And she was just angry at men in general. And so whatever decision I made, it was wrong. And she just, and so all that being said, you may be, the situation could be a lot more complicated. So here's another step I'm going to add that may happen before you meet with this person. You need to talk to a youth ministry friend that you trust, and call them and say, hey, here's what I'm going through. Number one, can you pray with me on this? Don't call a church member, by the way. Don't do that. Don't say, hey, I'm just going to confide in you. Because one of the things you'll find when you confide in a church member, they confide in 30 other people within the church. Not all the time, but that's a dangerous road to go. But find a youth minister you can trust and call and say, hey, listen, will you pray with me? Number two, what do you think? Help me see it from another perspective. Help me see it from 30,000 feet rather than me being right here. Because a lot of times you're right there in the woods, and you want to prove this point that you're right and they're wrong. And you may have this third perspective that can help you. So keep that in mind. If this is a consistent thing, one of the things that even if that meeting does not resolve the issue, make sure that you begin to build parents as your advocate for the things that you do. Okay. Your best defense when it comes to dealing with parents is other parents who understand the why behind why you do what you do, and that they become your greatest cheerleaders or encouragers. And y'all, here's the deal. That takes intentional time. You've got to meet with parents. You've got to meet with parents, and your whole reason for meeting with them is just really getting to know them and them getting to know you, so that when somebody says, I can't believe Seth did it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think Seth would do that. I was with him last week, and I just don't think he would say that. Really? And so immediately, because of the relationship, because they begin to know your heart, that happens. And with that being said, that's just a reminder, don't ever make decisions in isolation. You don't need to, when you're making ministry decisions, judgment decisions, don't make them in isolation. Now, if it's based on things that are immoral, unethical, what I'm saying, you don't have to go and check all these other resources. But when you're making a decision regarding ministry decisions, you need to always seek the counsel of wisdom. And that is the value of having teams, having parents that you use a sounding board kind of deal. But I would say that in the midst of all of that the parents have to see is a spirit of love from us. For us, one of the things that we do a couple times a year, we do a parent-teen night. And like traditionally this fall, what we would have done, COVID kind of restricted us from this, but we would have had all of our parents and teenagers gather in a rally time. We would have some praise and worship, and possibly a guest speaker, maybe just a testimony and a video recap of the summer, but something exciting in about a 20-25 minute time slot. And then the students all go into their small groups, and then I meet with all the parents, and I have about an hour session with the parents, and I do a training time with them. I'll have some specific things that I talk them through, trends that I'm seeing. By the way, CPYU, those are 4 letters, cpyu.org, is one of the greatest resources in student ministry and connecting with parents, finding information, trends, articles, podcasts. Walt Mueller, he's been a brother for a long time. He's based out of Pennsylvania, but he does a lot of youth ministry conferences, and just great wisdom and conservative wisdom. I would just say theologically, he's right on par with where we are. And so you can trust the stuff that's coming out of Walt's think tank there and the people that he engages. But I may use some of his material. Early on, I'll say this. When my kids were like really, really small, or even before I had kids, and when I was trying to do a parent meeting, one of the things I picked up really quick was kind of thinking or seeing that parents were like, what do you know about parenting teenagers? I mean, you're doing a parent conference and you're doing the parent conference. So what I ended up doing that was a home run was I called the superintendent of the school district to come and talk about the 3 main trends or issues or topics that he sees our students facing in school. And man, the place was packed. We had parents that I hadn't seen before. And so I introduced the superintendent, and he did his presentation, and I did not even know if he was a believer or not. Okay. But I was using him as the hook, and I felt like, I'm the minister. I can fill in the gaps there and share the gospel or share, bring the spiritual element. And it was awesome. I mean, fortunately he was a believer. But after he was finished, our parents were just like, it was great. And I'll use the term added value. I'm a John Maxwell coach. And one of the things he's drilled in my head is, when you're doing any of those kind of things, you need to add value in the lives of people, or they won't really respect, and come back the next time. So every time they come to something like that, they need to go away from there going, man, that was good. That was good stuff. The next parent meeting I had a family counselor that came in to talk about conflict in the home. The next time I had was we have had specialists come in that talk about, some of the cyber issues with our students, the effects of pornography. So bringing in specialists, all of a sudden, this is where it puts you. Let me share with you how this positions you. All of a sudden, the parents then begin to see you as the resource working to equip them as parents. They see you as their advocate. They're like, man, I really appreciate what he's doing or what she's doing, because they're trying to help us as parents. And so they no longer see you as, oh, well, she doesn't know what I'm going through because she's not or he doesn't know what I'm going through, because they don't see it that anymore. They see, hey, you're doing all that you can to resource them as a parent. And in a lot of ways that disarms some of the concerns they might have of whether or not you really get where they're coming from. So that's just something I would encourage you to do. One of the things we did with COVID, when COVID hit, that was just kind of a last minute deal that we started doing, and we had great response. We started doing family devotion Zoom nights on Thursday nights. And we'd never done that before. And it started off with a bang. We had a ton of folks that were climbing on. And as the summer came on and trips or whatnot, it began to wane. So we kind of shut it down. But we did learn that a lot of people are hungry for family type stuff where you're showing value to the family. And so that was a real plus. But that's a lot of content, a lot of information that I've kind of poured. I hopefully some of that's helpful to you. But I did want to kind of open up to see if there were some questions Brian, I don't know if anybody has popped any your way.
Yeah, David Bennett. I don't know if I think David's got a question. David, you want to jump on and ask real quick?
Yeah, I'll see. Am I unmuted? Am I good?
You good, man?
Cool. Yeah, Seth, I really appreciate it. I think all those things are really, really good. I think for me, thinking about parent ministry, specifically thinking about parenting when I don't have kids can be overwhelming at times. I completely agree that there's the students, the leaders, and then the parents, and it's threefold. We got to give attention to all three of those things. I know for me though, if I were to look at those three things, like parents becomes number 3 on that list, because it's just easier to deal with leaders and it's easier to deal with students, and you feel more comfortable in those areas than say maybe parents. But what are your thoughts and your response to just the thought that it's really not just the responsibility of the student pastor to disciple and to encourage and to really resource parents, but it's really the responsibility of the church as a whole to do this? And then what are some things just student pastors can do to kind of maybe, work alongside the rest of the staff, and being able to do those things and really not seeing it just as the student pastor's responsibility to do these things?
Yeah, I think my response to that would be that the student pastor has to make sure that it's being done. So I think in a situation where there's multiple staff that somehow could collaborate, and there may be one area that focuses more on family, could incorporate that in their role of responsibility. I think as a whole, parents are hungry for any kind of guidance at any level. And so I would just say that I think that as long as parents see that the church is resourcing them and walking alongside of them, and that there's intentionality. And so I think that's where, a youth pastor could say, or student pastor could say, and Dave, just honestly, what you just said, I think is so key, that, youth and youth workers, that's kind of a natural, because that's what you're doing all the time. And for many, stepping into that role of trying to equip parents is like, I really don't know, because I'm not a parent. I'm not really, can't speak the language of what y'all are speaking, but yet I know there's a need. If you're like that guy and there's nobody else really to help you with that, there's so many resources out there that you still could funnel their way. Newsletters, CPYU does a monthly newsletter for parents, just communicating, sending resources to parents, but also maybe even asking some volunteers of parents who have already gone through the parenting phase that may want to be a discipling leader as a volunteer to help guide that area of ministry, that they become the guru for you. And basically you're equipping them, you're basically, early on in my ministry here, I had a couple, Dr. Lee and Luann Taylor, that were hugely instrumental in our discipleship program. And I allowed them to really kind of run that train in the area of discipleship. And very similarly, they were helping to equip parents as well. So David, I think you bring up a great point to try to find ways that maybe there's other folks within the church that could help resource that. The biggest thing is just knowing that in the back of the student pastor's mind is, I've got to make sure that's being done somehow, whether I'm leading that and resourcing that, or I know somebody else is doing that and helping to disciple those parents and reach those parents for the gospel, but also equipping them with parenting tools.
Yeah, I think Daniel Bates has got a question as well. Daniel, you want to jump on?
I'm here. Hey, so I love the meet. So I started my role last year. And my first parent meeting, I had like everybody. They were all there, like, who's this new guy? And then, so I had one a month ago. I had a parent breakfast. I had 2. I'm like, I got free coffee, donuts. Yeah, I got 2. I was like, well, I'm going to make use of the 2 that are here. So, but my question is, so I have a family. They're in conflict with the church theology, church practice. And they have 2 high school boys that my heart just breaks for because they don't show up. What about students of parents in that situation? Are there ways to walk alongside them? That's my question. Like just conflict in the church and the students that are like in the wake of that. Like, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, Daniel, I appreciate your heart, man. I appreciate just the way that you worded that. And I think in a lot of ways, all that we can do in those situations is to convey compassion and a desire to reach them and just being intentional. Because I think while that may seem unique, it's not. And in every church situation, there are those outliers of people that maybe something's happened to cause that conflict or the disagreement. And the ones who lose out are the students, you know. And so I would just say, you know, to continue to intentionally engage in relationship building. And that would be and trying to win the right to speak into the lives of those students as you can. But just conveying the heart that you have and just trusting that the Lord will somehow bridge that gap. I'll say this, that during the COVID time, there's been a lot of things I think all of us have learned or has been exposed about strengths in our ministry and weaknesses in our ministry, but it's also led a lot of church families to become frustrated with the student ministries because of what they're doing or what they're not doing or what they've decided to focus on and not focus on. And there's been, you know, some church hopping within communities or talking and comparisons going on that I'm not sure normally would have happened. But I think right now there's such a sense of everybody feels entitled to evaluate, judge, and you know, more than ever before. But I'm not saying that's the case here in this situation. But I think just intentionally trying to build those relationships and trusting that the Lord will bring that together.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Seth, I have a few questions I've written down just as you talked and so forth. And I'm just curious what your response to this would be. Number one, do you think parents have a good reason for not respecting student pastors? Like, do you think that there's been enough poor planning, lack of communication, lack of professionalism that, you know, we've built a reputation for ourselves that we need to do our best to overcome? Or do you think that's unfair? I'm just curious how you would respond to that.
No, well, here's the deal. And here again, this is Seth's opinion, so it holds water with me and
Yeah.
maybe my mom. I don't know. This right here, all of a sudden entitles everybody to feel like mainly social media has fostered the environment of criticism and the freedom to criticize at a level that was not there when I was early in ministry. The role of ministry was, I don't want to say it was revered. I don't want to say people, you know, walked around and I was a holy man, you know, but now I almost feel like we're in an era where you can question everybody. You can question coaches, teachers. I mean, man, when I was growing up, you know, parents weren't running up to the school to, you know, put on behalf of their child. I mean, and some of y'all may have come through that or whatever, but now, you know, the parents, when there's a student that has an issue, the parent immediately questions the teacher. So somewhere along the line, we have fostered this mindset of when something goes wrong, question those in authority first. rather than evaluate, hey, what's going on in my own life. And I think that's what's happening, Bryant, that there is an environment for a lot of parents like, okay, you got to prove to me first that I can trust you before I trust you, because right now I'm skeptical. And when early in ministry, that was not the case. I think parents were just like, hey, the church brought you in, you went through the vetting process of hiring or whatever. And so we trust our youth minister. And, until you do something stupid to ruin that, and I'm not going to go through all my stories of where I did all that. But I do think that we are in an environment, and that's not going to change. I think that we need to, and that's why and here, Brian, let me say this. I think you've touched on something really good. That's why safeguards, communication, being on time, all those things are more important now than ever before. I was doing a meeting with a young youth minister earlier this week, and one of the things I was just kind of walking through with him was, for us in our ministry, I don't ever announce a departure time when I do a trip. It's just I never do. I say meet at the church at 7, and then we'll leave as soon as everybody arrives. Okay, because anytime you say, hey, we're leaving at 7, well, you're not going to leave at 7. I mean, because there's just somebody going, oh, we're not leaving till 7, so they show up at 7, like they can get all their luggage on and get checked in. But the same thing, when we're coming back, I say we're going to arrive somewhere around this time, but through Remind, we're going to send you updates throughout the day to kind of give you more focused time. Well, and what I'm saying is that people begin to expect these parameters. When we went out of state, we carry security with us. If we're at we went down to Laguna Beach for our retreat, so we carry a law enforcement officer with us down there to help us with anything and they do security for us. Well, that sounds crazy. Well, listen, you've got somebody in your church, or you can find somebody to help you with that. What that says to parents, okay, security matters to him. I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel better. I can sleep better at night knowing those kinds of things. Medical, we always carry medical personnel with us on trips like that. Parents want to know who's in charge of the medicine, who's in charge of distribution, and that doesn't need to be you. That doesn't need to be me. So all those things, when you line them up, I think it lessens the skepticism and the lack of trust that a parent may have when they see that we're going through all these steps. So I hope that answers that question, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another question that I was writing down. This is just me, the way I think, and I could totally be wrong on this, but there is a sense, in my opinion, that is it not a good thing when you have parents reaching out, maybe even being critical, because that shows that they're not apathetic and they really do care about our ministry and they want to see their child do well. They want to see the other students do well. I've always wondered, hey, a parent who's complaining, I mean, I go straight at them like a heat-seeking missile. I don't retreat from that. I run towards that, because is that potentially a sign that, hey, here's someone who is emotionally and is invested in the success of what we do? I just wonder, is that the right approach? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think you've hit on a great topic. I think the approach of going straight at it is crucial, because one of two things is what can happen. Number one, you can put the fire out before it burns the house down.
Sure.
Okay. But if they're complaining to a lot of other people. But number two, it could be that when you go and you engage in conversation, that they bring an awareness of something that you're going, wow, that's something we need to talk about.
Sure.
And I had no idea. We had a situation, and this was just pre-COVID. We had a situation that we did not know was as bad as it was with a couple of middle school boys. And they were actually doing some bullying and some things like that. And this complaining was happening. And so finally we engaged in conversation on it. And the week we were getting ready to move in to make this, these changes, COVID shut everything down.
Sure.
Okay. And so, but long story short, if we just kind of put it off, we may be missing some warning signs that are actually bigger.
Yeah.
I think you're wise in saying you need to run to it just to kind of see, hey, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that you value their input, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
We all want to hear the good. Man, that was awesome. That was the best thing ever. That was great,
Right.
And man, the music was too loud.
Yeah.
I always hate it when somebody says that, great.
I always wonder too, that if you run towards criticism, it develops this potential culture that parents, hey, if I complain about this, the student pastor is going to ask me about it, and so it kind of, part of me wonders too, if you run towards criticism rather than away from it, does it get parents to kind of rethink, hey, is this worth complaining about?
Right.
Is this worth bringing up? And then maybe you're potentially helping your culture to bring up really things that are only vital and not things that are not super important. So I do wonder about that.
I think, let me say this, and if I'm not saying this is, this, if it's good, God gave it to me just now. If not, just erase it later. But as a youth minister, you need to be approachable. You need to be approachable. You need to be open to everybody. So when a parent comes up to you and says something, good or bad, especially if they come to you bad, they need to know that they can come back again with something else if there's a real concern. Pat, I agree with you on that one.
Thanks,
dude.
Pat. I appreciate that.
I think that, and what will happen is that fosters so let's say, Fred comes to me and says, I heard that, on Thursday night of camp, y'all were up till 1:30 in the morning. And I'm not sure that's, I don't appreciate that. And I just concerned because, and then I'm like, well, let me tell you exactly what was going on there. We actually had 3 kids that were talking through, and you explain to them what's going on. They're like, okay, their whole perspective changes or whatever. Well, then Fred, when somebody else has a complaint and they go to Fred with it going, man, I can't believe da-da-da-da. Hey, you know what? I had an issue one time and I went straight to Seth, and man, he helped me understand it. And why don't you just go to Seth? You can talk to him. I don't know. He's, da-da-da. No, man, just go to him. We foster the environment of approachability, and I think that's huge.
Yep, absolutely. Another question that I wrote down was, I would agree with David Bennett in the sense that the role of discipling parents doesn't fall solely on our role as student pastors, but it needs to be an approach that the entire staff takes. I would agree with that. But I also wanted to ask you this: what role do your volunteers play in helping with this topic that we're talking about? Because I think that's an untapped resource that maybe sometimes we overlook or don't think about when it comes to helping with this topic. How would you say that you've been able to use your volunteers in the past that maybe have helped with this role, or could help a younger student pastor who's not married, doesn't have children?
Yeah.
What role could that play?
Well, the underlying kind of foundational thing in this whole conversation is this. It has to do with the word trust and confidence, that mentality. If they trust you, if they have confidence in you, the age, or if you're a parent or not, is almost irrelevant. I mean, to a degree. And so some of your greatest advocates are your youth workers who work alongside of you. And, for us, we have Wednesday night volunteers. Pre-COVID would be, I think terminology from now is going to be PC and post-C or whatever. But having regular leader meetings, and those leader meetings, you're casting vision, but they hear your heart. They're echoing the values of your ministry, and then they're primary communicators to the parents. And so, I may have, this volunteer or this youth worker here that's discipling 7 boys. Well, they're communicating directly with the parents of those 7 boys. And so a lot of times the way the filter works is they go to that volunteer first. Hey, I'm not sure I understand about this. And they go to that volunteer. Well, that if I've equipped that volunteer with information, then they're helping, specific on this issue of difficult parents. A lot of times they can squelch that or put that fire out before it even gets to me. So I do think the volunteers are key. And I think for that to happen, it goes back to the communication piece, Bryant, that we've got to constantly be communicating to our leaders, pouring into them, adding value to them. In our meeting components, we would always have a short, but I felt like was very valuable session of just personal development for them and helping them spiritually, but then also giving them updates on current student ministry trends and helping them know how to speak to parents.
Another question that I wrote down is there any connection between the small groups that parents attend and what you do in student ministry on Sunday mornings? Is there any connection or strategy as far as like how you get at communicating, building goodwill, trust with them? Is there any connection between, because in my opinion, I think Richard Ross is right. The most likely time that you're going to be able to have to influence parents is on the Sunday morning time frame. I think, asking parents to do things on Friday and Saturday mornings, I mean, I think that's all well intended, but I think you're more likely to get buy-in with them on Sunday morning than you would any other time. So I'm just curious, like, is there any kind of strategy that you guys have or that you would recommend to say, hey, what we do on Sunday mornings, this is going to be a part of building goodwill and trust, communication, strategy with our parents during that Sunday morning time frame? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's probably, I would say, would be a weakness that we have in our ministry, the intentionality of that. I have sporadically throughout the year, and obviously not using this year as a model, but maybe in previous years, going into the life groups, as we refer to them here on a Sunday morning, to at the request of parents there to do kind of a parent session, if you will, speaking into those parents about issues that I'm seeing and equipping them. So I try to do that on a regular basis each year. But as far as, from an intentional standpoint of connecting those on a regular basis, no. I will say that those times have been my most valuable when I go in there, because it is the time you're going to get them the most. You're going to, trying to, and unless you say, hey, tonight we're going to talk to your kids about sex, and for some reason they're going to show up for that. I think that Sunday morning is one of the things Richard does, and we have done it, but now in our current context, it's a little bit more challenging with the last several years. But we have done parent-teen gatherings on a Sunday morning, and they have been awesome. And when Richard comes in for a weekend, when he does his weekend events, he does that. He does a parent-teen gathering in the morning, and then he does the worship service, and it's huge. And the anointing on that guy obviously is phenomenal. But nevertheless, saying that the Sunday morning connecting with parents is a huge opportunity, Brian.
Yeah, I agree. Here's my last question, and then I'll throw it to anyone else who has questions they want to submit. How do you balance support for parents in front of students when the parent is struggling? I've gotten that question quite often.
Say that again now.
Like when oftentimes students will come to a student pastor or youth pastor, and they're critical of their parents.
Yeah.
And so I always think that, that's a situation where you have an opportunity to show support for the parent. But I always wonder, how do you do that in such a way without dismissing the student, but still showing support for the parent, even though the student may be right. But oftentimes the student oftentimes the student can be wrong. about the situation. They're not sharing the whole story, but how do you handle showing support for parents in front of students that maybe are critical of their parents?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is just consistent with Scripture is just when I'm in that situation with a student, and that happens often, is talking to the student about what it means to honor your parents. And that is a biblical mandate. And because the biblical mandate of honoring your parent brings harmony and order in the home, it doesn't mean you agree with your parent. It doesn't mean that everything's okay with your parent. But, one of the things I try to coach the student through is this: if they're convinced that their parent's wrong in this situation, one of the things that I try to share with them is, you're mandated to honor your parent, and you're seeing this and they're wrong in this or whatever. When I ask them the question, tell me how the conversations have gone down when you try to address it. Well, it's always heated. It's always heated. And so one of the things I try to coach them is this: okay, because Scripture teaches this, it's important for us to honor the Lord. I'm going to ask you to approach it this way. Ask your parent and say, listen, can we talk? Because I'm concerned about something, and I'm concerned about not handling it the right way. And I love you, and I love our family, but I feel like there's an issue of right and wrong, and I just want you to hear my heart, and I'm concerned. And it's all in the spirit of how we do it, and coaching students through that. And I'm telling you, I've done that so many times, especially on the nights that I talk about parent conflict in the home. I always have students come up to me and say, my dad does this, or my mom does this, or, my parents fight all the time, and I don't know what to do. And my counsel to them always is, well, in the heat of the moment, that's not the time to speak to them, because the thermometer's through the roof. But I said, you need to set up a time, and the 30 days, and I don't think I have a copy of it in here. But Richard Ross has the 30-day journal, or the 30-day process of turning parents and teens' hearts back toward each other. It's one of the most powerful pieces I have ever seen, and it's still available. You get that online, but it's spending 10 minutes a night, parents and teenagers communicating to each other. That's a whole nother deal. I won't even get that down that road. But to that student, they have to honor their parent, one particular student said, my dad is an alcoholic, and he cusses my mom, and he, all these things. How do I honor that? I said, well, here, let me tell you what honor means. Honor means that when your name is mentioned, it literally brings a, like, you're doing things the right way. When you're honoring your parents, when you're in their presence, you respect them even when they don't deserve respect. They don't, their actions don't deserve respect. You still respect them. And even to the point to where, unless they ask you to do something ungodly, obviously you can't do that. But a lot of times those actions disarm the situation, allows you to speak. So that's a tough one, but you have to be intentional about coaching them through that. And then I also say, listen, if you think there's a window where I could meet with your family, I would love just to talk with you guys, and maybe I could help. And that happens as well.
All right. Any last questions before we conclude today? All right. Listen, Seth, we appreciate your time, man. I mean, we really do appreciate you spending time with us. I think guys around our state really respect you, your role, the longevity of your role. And so we really are grateful that you would spend time with us talking about a topic that is very relevant, no matter what church size you're in. And so I appreciate that. I do want to highlight our next student ministry Zoomcast is Thursday, December 10th. We're going to have Chip Dean from Liberty Live that's going to be spending time with us. Chip Dean, it was actually recommended to us by Matthew Ballard from First Baptist Sumter. So just want to highlight you guys, hey, you guys are speaking into the guys that we bring on these student ministry Zoomcasts. And so if you have other guys that you'd like to recommend or like to see if we can potentially bring on, I mean, we reach out to all of them. So sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, but I'm thankful for the guys, your voice in the room, because it really is affecting and helping us kind of shape what this time looks like. Zach, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Seth, is it okay if I send you some messages later? Because I wanted to ask some things about parenting, but being that I'm a student pastor and Thomas Griggs' dad, and he's in this Zoom, I thought it might be weird. So I'll text you later if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Who's your daddy?
All right, guys, thank y'all so much, and we'll catch y'all later.